Well, thank you, Kieran, for having us. Could you first of all introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Kieran McCartan. I'm a professor in criminology at the University of the West of England, which is in Bristol in the UK. And my area of work is around the prevention of child sexual abuse, but also community risk management. So I've done a lot of work over the years with probation services about how you integrate people back into the community post conviction, including work with things like circles of support and accountability and treatment and different risk management models in policing.
Well, during this workshop, we heard a lot about gender-based violence, but what are the current challenges that you think, from an international perspective, we are facing?
Like gender-based violence is a really complicated and nuanced issue, but it's a simple issue at the same time. It's really paradoxical.
Yeah.
On one level, we're talking about individuals. We're talking about actually two partners or two individuals engaged in a toxic, problematic relationship. But also we're talking about social norms and social values and what's acceptable within communities and what's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And you look at something like Me Too, and Me Too is still rumbling away in the background, but the problem is it sort of hit a roadblock where we're like, how do you change social norms?
Mm-hmm.
So we know there's a problem now, we've
Yeah.
identified there's a problem now, but actually how do you shift social values? So we tend to sort of lean back towards it being an interpersonal, individual issue, and we tend to think about it in terms of psychology and behaviour. But I think we have to now start talking about it in terms of community and community values and community building and the way that communities understand it. And I think sometimes the issue around the terminology in the sense of violence. Actually, what it really is abuse, and it's a range of abuses. It's not just physical violence, but there's monetary violence, there's health-based violence, there's a range of things. But it's a topic that is growing and growing and growing in not only influence, but also popularity. So you see conversations about it across the EU and across the world, and there's conversations at a political level as well as an individual and a community level. So things are starting to shift, and I think we've got an opportunity now to do some really good solid work around it, but that sort of means thinking about it in a slightly different way and changing some of our views, which can be a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, that's quite a challenge to look inwards, basically, as well. Well, if you could give any recommendations, especially talking about the European Union, what would be your recommendation in this regard to overcome these challenges?
Well, I think there's a couple of simple and key things that we can do. The first one is recognize it, talk about it, give people space and ability. So we see some things like the Everyone's Invited movement where people are allowed to sort of put their thoughts down and record their thoughts. So give people license to speak and give people license to be heard and to be recognized.
Yeah.
And when you talk to victims of gender-based violence, a lot of the time that's what they want. They want to be recognized for what happened to them, and they want support in building services. So that would be the other thing, thinking about how services are funded, how they're built and how they run. A lot of the time, they're run by NGOs on a shoestring, and actually we need more work to be done. A third thing would be about changing the tone of the conversation. For many years, we have thought about gender-based violence as a criminal justice issue. We think about it in terms of the offence, but actually we need to start thinking about it more as a public health issue, because gender-based violence is as much of a health issue as it is a criminal justice issue. And health and well-being and psychology and engagement all flow into and flow out of gender-based violence. But I think the other thing that leads us to is a community issue. So how do we as communities come together to recognise it, to talk about it, whether it's bystander intervention, whether it's sex and relationship education in schools? How do we as communities deal with this rather than thinking about it as an individual issue that happens to someone over there and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, or you should know better, or all these justifications that we hear. So it's about reframing the issue, it's about allowing people to talk about the issue, and it's about developing community support and community support services around the issue.
I totally agree with you, Kieran. I think support is the basic, and we can build up from there.
Definitely.
Well, thank you, Kieran, for
No
your time.
problems. Thank you very much.